Hello, Gauteng. My name is Nazli Sharif, and today we are coming to you live for the True State of Gauteng Province address. In a few days, Premier Lesufi will deliver his State of the Province address. But before we hear more so-called bold, out of this world broken promises, we need to examine the real impact of the Premier's past promises and what this means to the people of Gauteng. Today, we will be hearing from DA Gauteng leader Solly Msimanga, who will be giving the true state of the province address. But before that, we have a panel of caucus leaders from across the province who will outline the real issues facing people on a day-to-day basis in municipalities. So make sure you stay tuned. From failed crime prevention to crumbling infrastructure, from an economic decline to service delivery collapse, the gap between promises made and promises kept continue to widen. What matters is how this provincial failure directly affects our towns and cities, where residents face the harsh reality of these broken promises daily. Please make sure you like and share this broadcast with all your friends and your family, and join the conversation online using the hashtag True State of Gauteng. So what are some of these promises that were made by Premier Lesufi? Let's take a look at what he says in last year's SOPA.
And we are developing a new railway line. We are developing a new railway line between Tshwane and East London, that the economy of Gauteng is back on its feet, and the economy of Gauteng is ready to serve our people, and the economy of Gauteng is ready to create opportunities for our people, and the economy of Gauteng is ready to ensure that the SMMEs benefit out of this process. We are proud that the government that I have the honor to lead have just invested 2.7 billion in the Gauteng infrastructure development so that we can have a reliable broadband and 5G that can make companies to connect with their clients easily in our province. The good thing about this GBN is that those small businesses will no longer struggle to get connectivity in our province. Those schools will no longer struggle to get connectivity. The public institutions will never struggle to get connectivity. If you don't, after has recruited 30,000 new policemen, that 25% of all the new policemen that have just graduated from the police academy are coming here in Gauteng so that they come and defend our communities. Anyone that has a smartphone can go to an app store and download GPG panic button. When you press that panic button when you are under siege or under attack, we'll have close to 17,000 law enforcement agencies that will come to your rescue and assist you. We have broken the backbone of Zamazamas in Gauteng. We are now increasing our support on gender-based violence. The government that I have the honor to lead has donated 31 new cars to the Sexual Offensives Unit of the South African Police Service. We are now rolling out 8,400 CCTV cameras across our province. Your lives in the hostels will change for better. Your lives in the hostels will be treated with dignity. Your life in the hostels will be treated like human beings. Your life in the hostels will get free data, free Wi-Fi, like any other person that needs that particular services in your areas. We as the provincial government We are going to pick it up here in Johannesburg. Where there is refuse that was not collected, we will go there and collect it and ensure that Gauteng is clean. That we've approached Rand Water, and Rand Water is ready. If a municipality can provide clean water, Rand Water will step in on our behalf and go and provide clean water to our communities. We developed our own energy response crisis plan. We developed our plan to ensure that those without electricity in our province get access to electricity. No one is going to be left there because they don't have medical aid. We are urging the president to sign the national health insurance so that everyone can have access to quality health system in our province. We are ready to improve our hospitals so that we can deal with this. Listen to this. Today, 90,000 of them can fill F&B stadium as employed young people who don't want handouts. Today, they are getting a salary every month.
Welcome back to studio. I must say, the amount of broken promises, one simply can't keep up with it. And I think I rolled my eyes so far back, I almost had to try and find it. But in order to fully try and understand what the failed promises of Lesufi means to the people on the ground, I am now joined in studio by Tshwane Councillor Celia Brink, by Johannesburg Councillor Belinda Essi-Jonyoko, and Mogale City Councillor Tyrone Gray. Welcome to the panel, and thank you so much for joining us today on this special broadcast. We have seen a collapse in municipalities across Gauteng, and each and every one of you are at the cold face of issues facing residents in the province. Let me start, Celia, by asking, what is your take on the current state of Gauteng?
So you have a lot of promises. You have states of the province where, the Premier tries to beat himself every year, but he simply doesn't keep track with the commitments he makes. He thinks that the game is how wild can your promise be instead of what can you do to actually put a train of delivery in motion. And if we take municipalities, for example, the interaction between a province and a municipality, a province's role is support, monitoring, and intervention in that order. The province has certain resources that it can apply to assist municipalities. 2 years ago, and this wasn't part of the video, 2 years ago, the state of the province, Premier Lesufi made a big announcement about power stations in Tshwane. He did absolutely nothing. When I was the mayor of Tshwane and our team was in place, we took the steps to get those power stations in the hands of IPPs. We set the ball in motion. The Premier made his announcement. He did absolutely nothing to support us. So literally, instead of support, monitoring, and intervention, he just makes announcements. He hopes for things to happen. And the irony of it is that those power stations, now that Premier Lesufi's party and their coalition is in charge of Tshwane, all of those plans have been shelved. So there's been regression instead of progress.
Yeah, so it's a hope for the best. Throw money at it and hope for the best. Belinda, what is your take on the current state of Gauteng?
Thanks, Nasli. Clearly, Premier Lesufi is not living in the province we are living in. In Johannesburg, he's talking about electricity at hostels. Has the Premier been to Madala Hostel in Alexandra? Has he been to Helen Joseph Hospital in Alexandra? There are no electricity most of the time, and there is no Wi-Fi, most importantly. If there's no electricity, it's going to be very difficult to provide any of the issues he's mentioning and all the promises he's making. He's talking about the water issue. We know exactly what's happening in Johannesburg. Just last week, we've had to write to Treasury about corruption within, possible corruption within Joburg Water, so they can investigate the 263 million that has been given to two companies where there were questions about the water supply. So clearly, under Premier Lesufi, municipalities like Johannesburg, their corruption is thriving, the water tanker mafia is doing whatever they want to do, and there's no support and supervision, and at least support to check what is happening, oversight, to ensure that things happen the way it's supposed to happen for residents in Johannesburg. I haven't even mentioned his promise about pick it up. Pick it up cannot even pick up in Johannesburg. How are they going to pick up for the rest of everywhere else he wants assistance with? And it's unfortunate that we had so much of progress when the DA-led multi-party was in government. At the time, Dr. Palatse was the mayor, and we had a fleet of vehicles that was that just came on to assist even with illegal dumping. All of those things have been reversed with this new ANC-led government, and the Premier is in another province. He's not in Gauteng because clearly he's completely out of touch with what's happening in his province.
Yeah, Belinda, I couldn't agree more. Same question to you, Tyrone. You're from Mohale City. What is your take on the current state of Gauteng?
Well, I think the problem with Lesufi is that he needs a little bit of stimulol because the lies that are coming out of his mouth is just making his breath stink. The facts matter, and the fact is that there is no visionary leadership, there is no strategic progression to improvement, and everything he does is reactive. We see the Zamazamas running amok, especially in the West Rand area. There has been no improvement in our infrastructure, there has been no improvement in our safety. So once again, I concur with my colleagues, he's living in a fantasy world.
Yeah. Absolutely. Celia, I want to go back to you. Premier Lesufi promised support to fix failing infrastructure. Yet municipalities are reporting critical vacancy rates, up to 50% in waste management and water services, for example. How has this staffing crisis affecting municipalities' ability to deliver simple basic services?
Yeah, so obviously the staffing structure and your payroll is a municipal responsibility first and foremost. But the province does, as I mentioned before, have certain additional resources that you can apply as a shared resource. That's the idea. I mean, all of this jabbering about a district development model, there is no support. Cogta province is hollowed out. And if you want to see what province means to municipality, go to Mfuleni. That place has been under provincial administration since 2018. Wow. And like a patient in the ICU who's only become sicker and sicker, so Mfuleni has deteriorated. And somehow the province has the ability to step back and to say, oh, no. Despite this place being under intervention, they can't account for what is happening. To me, it seems that Premier Lesufi's power base within the ANC is largely in Joburg. So he always talks about Joburg. It's going to be pick it up. That's going to help us. It's going to be the inner city of Joburg. But it's terrible. If that's the model that you want to export, keep that model. And in fact, roll it back. I'm going to say keep it. We want to save Joburg. We want to have our city of gold. But I mean, that's the frame of reference. And even when he goes and he puts in transformers, have you ever seen him put a transformer in Tshwane? He doesn't. Have you ever seen him put a transformer in Ekurhuleni? No, because his power base, his party and his comrades are in Joburg. And even despite that patronage, Joburg is looking worse than any other metro, quite frankly. I mean, the infrastructure, just the state of the infrastructure is far worse than the other metros.
Celia, I'm a resident of Johannesburg, and I am shocked to see the decline of the city that I love so much, that I was born and bred in. So Belinda, this takes us straight to you. How has the province's failure to maintain crucial infrastructure directly impacted Johannesburg's ability to deliver basic services? Now, we did speak in your introduction a little bit about Pick It Up and the water crisis and the electricity. Maybe we can just expand on it a little bit.
I think one of the things that we need to just, anybody that drove this morning on the road, you just have to, on your way driving here, How many of the robots were working? The traffic lights. How many was working? Your potholes on the road. If you have had any chance to go into the CBD, you will see that Lily Ngoyi Street is still in the mess it was in about a year plus ago. And there's no proper solution. The water crisis is at a peak at the moment. The infrastructure that should have been maintained over years had not been done. There's been insufficient investment in infrastructure in Johannesburg in particular. We're not even going to talk about the corruption that is happening with some of the issues that happen in Johannesburg. And this is one of the reasons why we wrote to Treasury to investigate some of these issues. We have people who have not had water for weeks. We now have a situation in the south where old age homes are worried about the quality of the water that is delivered to them in the water tankers. We have had a situation where councillors had to go to the depot to collect the trucks. We have just this past weekend, we've had a situation where the Patriotic Alliance were hijacking trucks or taking over driving trucks to stations where it's supposed to be, which is a big problem because it shows there's lack of oversight, lack of governance that's happening in the municipality, and the mayor and his executive is turning a blind eye. We've had to intervene over the weekend by asking that law enforcement get involved. We haven't even gotten to the electricity supply. The fact that the transformers, the substations has not been maintained over years is a bigger problem, because this is why if there was load shedding, you have extended blackouts. And imagine the amount of damage that does to infrastructure that has not been maintained, and the damage it does to business and job losses within the city. So it is a big problem. These were on a good trajectory when we were in government, the multi-party government that was DA-led. And unfortunately, it's all been reversed, and we're seeing a bigger and bigger decline in the city of Johannesburg.
Yeah, that is true, and we see it every single day. Tyrone, Mohali City residents have been complaining that bills are unaffordable, with some increases over 100%. That is crazy. Yet service delivery has gone down, it's declined. What is the solution to this?
So the solution is to have a DA majority government in power. It is crippling that we have been under a doomsday coalition of ANC and EFF for 666 days now. And an underpinning of participatory democracy is consultation with the public. They failed to do consultation. They introduced a restructured electrical tariff, which has literally made the mutable bills more expensive than some people's bond repayments on their house. It is a slap in the face of all the residents. It is their tradition of ruling from ivory towers and not from the grassroots up. And they have failed to provide democratic and accountable government. They have failed to ensure sustainable resources. They have failed to promote social, economic development, safe and healthy environments. And they have definitely failed to encourage participation from communities and community civic organizations in the matters of local government. Basically, service delivery is so bad that our cemeteries are looking like safaris. You cross a road, you could get bitten by a snake. And as the colleagues have indicated, service delivery has taken such a dive that we are actually having an exodus. You drive through the city and there's more and more houses up for sale.
Yeah,
If I may just add with regards to the staffing and the governance issues, the same thing in Johannesburg. We have the Premier talking about staff. They're using Johannesburg as a dumping ground for cadres. And this is one of the reasons the city, we as the Democratic Alliance in opposition in Johannesburg, has written to ask for a skills audit and also to ask for lifestyle audit in view of all of these things that's happening. There is an Auditor General report that has been very scathing about what's happening in Johannesburg, the fact that the staff is incapable and are not able to utilize the city's assets properly and are not capable to run the city. So that is why we've also asked the National Treasury and also the mayor to ask for a skills audit to see that the right people are in the right job. But unfortunately, we have a premier like Lesufi. When he wants something done in Johannesburg, he uses Johannesburg, because it's his biggest support base, as the dumping ground to put cadres in who possibly could not be properly qualified to do the job.
And then what happens is you have a bloated staff component, and these people are getting paid real money, and they're getting paid a lot of money. These are taxpayers' money that essentially that they're using. The DA in Gauteng has and continues to work tirelessly to hold the Gauteng government to account, not only highlighting the issues, but also providing an alternative to the mess we find ourselves in. Let's hear now from some of the shadow MECs on some of the issues facing Gauteng.
Let's talk about jobs in Gauteng. 2.5 million people in our province just can't find work. There's over 500,000 more who have actually given up even looking. Those are not just numbers, they're real people. They can be your friends, your family, perhaps even you. Remember Nasi Spani, Lesufi's grand promises of jobs left, right and centre? Well, less than 5% of those jobs were actually permanent. The rest, gone. Those 32,000 teaching assistants, they were all kicked to the curb without warning. Lesufi's current job program provides temporary relief while unemployment continues to rise and rise and rise. We lost 66,000 jobs in one quarter alone. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to be this way. The DA has a real plan for creating permanent jobs, not quick fixes or gimmicks or empty promises, but real, lasting solutions. Because you deserve better than a government that plays games with your future.
Good day. My name is Rufilo Nseche. Social development in Gauteng has collapsed. We are finding that we have lost over 240 beds for people who need rehabilitations from substance abuse. That is so sad, especially considering the same department, Gauteng Department of Social Development, has then returned 160 million rand to Treasury. Let's take it on a broader perspective. End of March 2025, the department then returns holistically 554 million. Of that 554 million, 228 was earmarked for NPOs. Today, Gauteng NPOs have to go to court to fight for the Department of Social Development to pay them. Instead of paying NPOs, they are busy wasting money in legal fees. Under a DA government, the Gauteng welfare services would be fully operational. We would be making sure that we are looking after the elderly, we are looking after children and vulnerable children, we are looking after the disabled, and we're looking after HIV and AIDS. And we will also make sure that we've got a proper running homelessness strategy so that people are taken care of. The DA is the only hope for Gauteng, and the DA has a plan to look after the vulnerable. We would never ever allow money to get returned.
What Panyaza Lesufi will not tell you during the State of the Province address is that in Gauteng, the so-called economic powerhouse of the country, there are millions of people, especially the poor, who suffer on a daily basis because of poor policies, poor governance, and unbridled corruption. Politicians, officials, and hangers-on enrich themselves without any pangs of conscience. The culpability for this lies squarely on the shoulders of politicians who, besides enriching themselves at the expense of the people, fail in their oversight role and turn a blind eye to their patronage networks and their comrades who pilfer our resources like sharks at a feeding frenzy. From PPE corruption worth billions of rands to the decontamination of schools at highly inflated prices. From the loss of 500 million rands on refurbishing a hospital that should have cost 50 million, to the theft of 3 billion by criminal networks operating at Tembisa Hospital. The question that has to be asked, how much of these resources have made their way into party coffers or into the pockets of officials and politicians? Only the DA can save Gauteng from the downward spiral to a dystopian, failed province.
People using our provincial roads on a daily basis are faced with the scourge of broken traffic lights. 149 traffic lights in our province is not working. Why is this? Because government hasn't been able to spend the maintenance budget it received. 297 million rand has been sent back to Treasury, money that could have been used to fix our roads, to maintain our infrastructure and to better our lives. On a daily basis, people sit with the havoc of potholes and broken traffic lights. Parents needing to take their kids to school, workers needing to get to their jobs, and ambulances needing to get to emergencies are faced with a broken government. Our public transport is a mess and our road infrastructure is falling apart. What's government doing about this? They've cut the budget again. So this is not about your inconvenience. This is about your time. This is about your safety. This is about putting your life at risk. Every pothole, every broken traffic light, and every failed maintenance just shows again the government that has completely lost touch with the struggles on the ground.
What's happening in Gauteng schools isn't just a crisis. It is a betrayal of our children's future. We have grade 1 classrooms with up to 92 learners, and we have grade 2 classrooms with up to 87 learners. How do we expect our children to have a conducive learning environment in conditions like this? After 9 years of promises were made, 29 schools in our provinces are still built with deadly asbestos materials. This isn't just about infrastructure. This is about our children's health and safety. These schools should have been eradicated already back in November 2016. Yet we are, in 2025, still exposing our children to these dangerous hazardous conditions. The current government promised 4,000 satellite schools to ease overcrowding in the province. Where are they? The DA has a clear, implementable plan to build proper schools, eliminate dangerous hazardous materials, and ensure that every child in the province receives the education that they deserve. This isn't just about politics, it is about our children's future.
For example, I think it's 7 out of the 11 police stations are at the top of the list when it comes to contact crime. And we're not seeing a reduction of crime, especially around GBV, which the Premier speaks about. It's almost as if they speak about these issues just to tick it off the box, but there isn't any real care that they have when they come to actually protecting and making sure that citizens are safe and secure. But what is your take on that?
As I said before, the Premier is in another province. He's honestly not in touch with what's happening in his province. Johannesburg, in addition to all the power not working, the street lights not working, the traffic lights not working, crime has increased. And we have not seen visibly those Panyaza in Johannesburg. We've seen them in the CBD. And I know that some councillors have asked for them to assist with at least bylaw enforcement in their different wards. None of that has been forthcoming. A lot of these has to do with the intergovernmental relations as well. There's been, seems to have been a push and a tug of war between the Premier and Johannesburg, the current administration, with them not understanding each other. And the province's role is not supposed to take over even simple things like bylaw enforcement. They're supposed to support the municipality. And in Johannesburg, having the Panyaza in the Premier's office is a big problem, because it's not assisting with what's supposed to happen in Johannesburg. The other issue with safety. The other issue with the safety in Johannesburg is a compound issue, because we have seen, I've mentioned previously, water trucks and the water tanker mafia, the construction mafia, is causing havoc with projects and the water supply in Johannesburg. We've seen vandalism in Johannesburg, and where's the law enforcement when these things are happening? So we're not seeing them on the ground. He's having these grand plans that he's mentioning, and we're not seeing that on the ground. He should not be taking over some of the responsibilities that is a municipal responsibility. He should be supporting it. And this is one of the things we are saying, that there should be a bit of a devolution of power of law enforcement, and allow municipalities to get the support but be independent at the same time.
To everybody joining us on the live broadcast, just another example of living in a failed province. Electricity is not guaranteed, and such things happen. Before we were cut out, we were having a look at the Shadow MEC videos. Let's go back to that and hear what the Shadow MECs have to say.
Standing here in the middle of Johannesburg, looking at what the Premier had promised last year in terms of the rejuvenation and the renovation of revitalization of our inner cities. Mr. Premier, nothing has happened. The streets are still crumbling, traffic lights are not working, we have informal rubbish dumps developing on street corners, we have electricity outages, roads crumbling under potholes, we have traffic signals not working. All of that in spite of promises that you had made to revitalize and rejuvenate our inner cities. We do know that for many years, Kopanang project was at the forefront of DID, Department of Infrastructure Development. A failed project. Let this rejuvenation of our inner cities not become yet another project characterized by failure to deliver, characterized by corruption, and characterized by the empty promises that we have seen from you, your government, and previous governments under the ANC.
Healthcare in Gauteng is an absolute crisis, and Premier Lesufi is doing nothing about it except making false promises. Last year, for instance, he claimed that the provincial government was going to buy 18 private hospitals in a private-public partnership and use them for healthcare of all citizens. Where are these 18 hospitals? Nothing has happened about that. It's like his other promise that they were going to computerize all files in our hospitals, and that's way behind schedule. People still have to have long waiting times, and the corruption in the Gauteng Health Department. You know, Devita Deokaran was assassinated because she tried to stop it. He's really not cleaning out that department, and that's why the DA is calling for the Gauteng Health MEC to be fired, as well as the head of the department, who's actually being investigated by the SIU for alleged involvement in bribery. If this is the type of person that Premier Lesufi appoints, I mean, we're never going to get help out in Gauteng.
Premier Lesufi has promised Gauteng residents that e-tolls are a thing of the past. Behind the scenes, however, nothing could be further from the truth. This year alone, Gauteng has paid 4.1 billion rand towards the servicing of e-toll debts on assets that are owned by national government, not by the Gauteng province. At the same time, a provincial road in Boksburg, Rondebolt Road, has a sinkhole that has been sitting here for over 2 years. This hole could have been fixed 40 times over at the price it has cost Gauteng to go and pay for a national asset. This money could have been better spent fixing this road, fixing our hospitals, fixing our schools, but yet it is paid somewhere else. But that is not actually where it ends, because a total of 21.8 billion rand will have to be paid to national government over the next few years. Every cent of this money is taxpayer money. This is absolute daylight robbery.
Nearly 1,600 people have been murdered just in this last quarter alone. This just shows that Premier Lesufi's empty promises at last year's SOPA and every time he gets onto a soapbox means nothing. It's our families that are killed. It's our families that's suffering. And it's time for Lesufi to come to the ground and to actually look at how can we address crime properly in this province. He needs to take hands of the safety and security industries in Gauteng and ensure that we can actually fight crime with strategies that can work and learn from people that knows what to do. 47% of the police officers in Gauteng is contributing to crime and corruption in this province. It clearly shows Lesufi is not in control, and Lesufi needs to move this department out of his office and dedicate a MEC to fight crime in Gauteng so that we can feel safer in Gauteng.
It is clear that Gauteng has been let down by Premier Lesufi and his failed promises. The truth is that we cannot continue on this path. Let me welcome DA Gauteng leader Solly Msimanga, who will present the true state of the province address.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie. Good morning to the members of the media that are here. Good morning to the people that are watching at home. And I want to say, Sanbonani, to the people of South Africa. Isn't this a great time to be alive in South Africa? Where for the first time ever, you have a government at a national level that is not able to do as it wishes, as it wants. I promise you, if the ANC had a 50% plus one, yesterday, we would have had a 2% increase. We would have had an increase in VAT that, you would be told, stomach it and get on with it. But this is what the DA does. The DA cares, and the DA is there to then keep those that are in power in check. And when we are in government, we are not just there for the blue lights. We're not there just to make things, look pretty for the politicians, but we are there to make sure that ultimately the residents do benefit from what is happening. And I guess this is something that Panyaza Lesufi is very scared of, and this is why we had the tussle that we've had last year when we were talking about becoming part of the government of provincial unity. But I want to talk to you today about the true state of what Gauteng looks like, as you would have heard from our colleagues here, and if you would have heard from some of the residents, and you actually seen for yourself. If you're driving into this building here from the Johannesburg roads, you would have seen the decay, and yet you had a premier that could go to parliament and lie on national TV and talk about a city that is rising, a city of gold that is flourishing yet again. But when you walk the streets of Johannesburg, it's something completely different. The Gauteng residents have enjoyed the pain of empty promises, failed service delivery, and false proclamation under the leadership of Premier Panyaza Lesufi. His populist strategy has misled the residents who were made to believe that his leadership of government of provincial unity will do everything that needs to be done to ensure that the lives of the people of Gauteng is actually improved. As the leader of the Gauteng Provincial Government of Provincial Unity, Lesufi has excelled in making mainly arrogant, broken promises and has been at the center of denialism. His administration does not appear to be prepared and to have solutions for the major challenges that Gauteng faces, such as the severe water crisis, and you would have heard my colleague speaking to that, the overcrowded at schools, and we'll talk a little more about that, and the hospitals that are all not able to provide the necessary services that it's supposed to be providing to the residents and to the people of Gauteng. Every year that Lesufi has delivered the State of the Province address, he has boasted and made bold promises about improving the life and the conditions of the living conditions of the residents through the creation of employment, through the welfare services, through the quality education, through healthcare services, and most importantly, fighting crime. Yet what we are seeing and what the people are telling us on the ground is something that is completely different to what Tate Lesufi has been telling us. We have heard enough of his unrealistic promises, his lack of proper implementation, and we have heard enough of lack of accountability that seems to be, informed here in Gauteng. The Gauteng economy is suffering, and investors are not comfortable in investing in it due to the numerous challenges that the Premier Lesufi's government has failed to address. The case in point is his promise to clamp down on the corruption and the crimes so that the economy can grow. Yet he refuses to release the crucial reports that we've been asking for. You would remember we've called you here to speak about 177 reports that we said they must be made public. Last week, you would have read about the 600 million that has gone towards social development, or that was supposed to go towards social development, that has actually then disappeared. You would have heard of school kids that were supposed to be benefiting from school uniforms. They are not getting those school uniforms. You would have heard about the scholar transport that, is now not reaching certain communities. You would have heard about GOGOs and OPAs that are supposed to be benefiting of the social development and the NGO grants that are not now reaching there. This is things that are now being hidden here in Gauteng. And we are saying that we want those things exposed and we want the culprits to be held accountable. This is something that he's failed to implement. And this is something that is failed also, to let the public into his confidence. We have been asking, why hide those reports if you're saying you're running a transparent and open government? Why is the 177 reports that will include what happened with the Anglo-Ashanti Hospital, that will include what is happening in the social development, that will include what is happening with the tenders within the Department of Safety and Security, with the guns that have been brought and so many things that fall within those particular departments? These are reports that will shed some light in terms of what is actually happening here in Gauteng. But he's hidden time and time again behind the so-called protection of information that we know that is nothing more than hiding what the comrades and the corrupt officials have been up to all this time. We are saying that the economy will not be growing until some of these things are addressed. And we have seen quite a number of examples where investors are saying, until government gets its act together, we are reluctant in investing here in Gauteng. This is why the unemployment rate continues to soar in Gauteng, with 2.5 million residents who are now unemployed, and further 572,000 who are now become discouraged job seekers. This is according to the quarterly labor survey force survey that has been released in the last quarter of 2024, which highlight that Gauteng has a 34% unemployment rate, and that we have also lost about 66 jobs in the last quarter alone. They are not just numbers. These are people that have families and they have been denied opportunity to support their families and lift themselves out of the ravaging hands of poverty. Poverty and unemployment continues to grow despite Lesufi's bold promises to grow the economy and create conducive environment to attract investors who will create more job opportunities and reduce unemployment rate. We need to question what has happened to these promises. What was there even a plan? And if there was a plan, what has happened to it? Why hasn't it been implemented? Or is it just somewhere gathering dust while we have paid millions to consultants to be putting these plans together? What has Lesufi really done to make sure that these things are done? And you would hear some of these things next week where there will be great, and bold new commitments and new announcements of these jobs and that jobs here. But you need to be asking what has happened so far to make us believe that indeed this is happening. You'd remember last year during the State of the Province address, Lesufi said, you are employed on a permanent basis, pointing to Premier Panyaza that were sitting in the crowd. Not a single one has been employed permanently. I dare you go and find one that can now tell you today that they've been employed permanently. None of them. In fact, some of the people that under the Nasispani have had their contracts terminated the very next week. When we asked, where was the budget? Where was the mandate? What is the plan? Nothing was forthcoming. And we had the department of, a certain number of departments heads releasing memos to then say some of the contracts will then be put to a hold or will be ended. And Panyaza started threatening people to then say, this is my legacy, this is my project. You will make sure that it continues, irrespective of whether you have the finances to support it or not. This talks about a man who is really more of a cowboy that shoots from the hip and think about the actions later on. And as I said, the Nasispani has been nothing but an election ploy. And I've said this a number of times to then say the people that have been promised jobs will not have the same jobs post the elections. And I've been proven right. A number of them have actually had their contracts terminated immediately after the elections. You think I'm lying? Go and ask the 32,000 teacher assistants that were given contracts and were promised an additional extension onto their contracts. That has ended. Now, we're still struggling with teachers that are not able to then cope with the number of learners that they have in classes. We have in certain instances where we have classes that are having 98 learners in a class, in a grade grade 1 classroom where you have 98 learners, in certain schools. And we need those teacher assistants to be assisting, yet we're not getting that. And yet Panyaza, who had the audacity to stand and say these are people that he has employed in certain instances on a permanent basis, had their contracts cancelled and nothing said to them, and now they find themselves again joining the millions of unemployed people in Gauteng and in South Africa without any hope of ever getting a job again. The recruits were also appointed with a promise that there will be further training, and that has never taken place. And now we ask ourselves, is really what, these promises that Panyaza has been making year in, year out, what we have come to then realize as the reality in South Africa. When we talk about the economic development, Premier Lesufi has made promises to the residents of Gauteng that his government will focus on the special economic zones. And I'm telling you, on Monday, you will be invited to one. You will see him grabbing, the spotlight and talking about the partnership that they have. But what he's failing to tell the people of Gauteng is that these are some of the things that the private entities and the private companies are doing despite of the involvement of government. And in certain instances, some of these companies are saying it is government that is holding us back. And even when government holds us back, we will do what needs to be done to make sure that we continue to keep the economy going. And we want to thank those companies that, in spite of government's failure in Gauteng, they continue to do what needs to be done. He speaks about the revitalization of industrial parks. This is another empty promise, as Nazli Sharif has actually then conducted with some of us a number of visits to some of the so-called special economic zones. I can tell you right now, some of them have become hype or hiding spot for criminal elements. Go to Pennyville and see what is happening there. Go to Annandale and tell me what is happening there. Go to Orlando special economic zones. Go to El Dorado Park, amongst others, and in Dobsonville and see what is the real state. Some of these things that have now been turned into income earning for the mafias that are controlling these things, where in fact they have been hijacked and people are collecting rent illegally and ensuring that they enrich themselves instead of ensuring that the economy on small businesses actually thriving. This is what government has come to do in this particular spaces. We have spent from the development or the Department of Economic Development, we spent over 134 million rand between 2015 and 2018 to maintain the industrial parks in Gauteng. But go and tell me if this is indeed money well spent, if this is contributing towards the economy and especially towards ensuring that small businesses do thrive. Lesufi has also made promises about the distribution centers that will assist small spaza shops to stock up their goods in bulk and be able to compete with other businesses. The reality is that the township spaza shops are suffering despite the existence of Lesufi's distribution center plan as they run out of stock. Last week, MPL Nestle visited some of the centers, including an oversight at the Thokoza Distribution Center in Ekurhuleni, where the shelves were completely empty despite millions of taxpayers' money spent on these centers. This hinders the growth of the township economy and limits the employment opportunities that can actually bring in so much relief here in Gauteng. Yet again, Panyaza has gone and made announcements that he cannot back. But you will hear more grand plans come next week and more hashtags about this or that. That translates to nothing. Furthermore, the Gauteng township businesses are struggling to survive and compete in the market due to failure of the Township Economic Development Act. I must speak about this act because this is one act that we supported initially. And we supported this act because it was aimed at facilitating and promoting inclusive economic growth. We understand from the DA perspective that you will not be able to then have growth if certain segments or certain portions of the society is then left behind. And this is why we support it. But the implementation of this act has been a complete failure, which has now led to it being taken under review. It is not an enabling act to address the challenges faced by the entrepreneurs and small businesses in the township, and has no regulation. It is, in fact, has been able to ensure that the hardships that the township businesses have endured continue unabated. We also had grand plans about ensuring that there is going to ensure that there's going to be a force to ensure that all those illegal spaza shops that are operating in our townships are going to be a thing of the past. Please tell me how many of those have actually then been closed down. This has been more and more of empty words that have really resulted in nothing, and the people of Gauteng have been subjected to more lies instead of real action that changes their life around. The state of the economy has also affected the tourism industry. We have witnessed a decline in the following areas. So in 2023-2024, the Gauteng reported that 7,534,929 overnight trips, which made about 8% in the previous year, have now declined to about 2,318,305. And when you start asking what is then the greatest contributor to that, a number of things do come up. A number of tourists now don't feel that they are safe when they're in Gauteng. The infrastructure is not there to support them being in Gauteng and to spend their money. But more importantly, they are saying that it is now also become unattainable for them to remain in Gauteng, to do business in Gauteng, and actually to come and spend their money in Gauteng. We need to address the issue of safety and security. We need to address the issue of the infrastructure that makes Gauteng more attractive to tourists that want to then visit here. Which then tells us that this so-called Visit Gauteng Zwakala hashtag has just been another hashtag that has been added on, but has failed to really catch the imagination and to make sure that there is impact on the ground in terms of attracting the investment through the tourism that we want to then or should be attracting. Premier Lesufi also promised to provide reliable internet access to free Wi-Fi in the townships, and that all public institutions, including schools, healthcare facilities, and state offices will have dependable Wi-Fi. This was welcomed as a relief by all residents, considering the high level and often unaffordable data cost. It was going to make it easier to have and to make sure that we're able to then communicate, seek employment opportunities, study and operate businesses. However, this has never materialized, and this is not something that we say as the DA. This is according to their own admission in their own reports, that 95% of the schools in Gauteng still do not have classroom connectivity. You would remember that Panyaza was saying we are building classrooms of the future, yet 95% of the schools are not even being able to be connected as we talk now. We're still not having classrooms of the future. The Gauteng broadband network has not yet been fully rolled out across the province to ensure that the residents are able to then have the connectivity that the Premier was boasting about in a number of the State of the Province address. He's also failed to keep his promise to fighting corruption. As I said earlier on, we have a number of reports that have actually then been leaked to us. But when we ask formally for these reports, we are told, no, you cannot get these reports because we have to protect the individuals. And then ask the question, who should you be protecting? Should you be protecting the interest of the residents of Gauteng and their tax money? Or are you now protecting the individuals who have benefited through corrupt activities and maladministration? Why should we have a Gogo in Tembisa that is still struggling because the NGO that she was receiving some kind of help from is no longer receiving the money that is supposed to be receiving? Why should it be that a child who's supposed to be receiving uniform before the schools open in January is not able to then receive the uniforms because that entity that had been previously been paid to provide school uniforms has now not been paid, or there are now ghost contracts that have somehow siphoned millions and billions of rents out of the Gauteng coffers. And yet, when the residents and when we are asking for these reports to be made public, we are told we cannot see those reports. Therefore, it then talks about, the more empty promises of an accountable government that we have here in Gauteng. If Panyaza Lesufi is serious about ensuring that there is a corrupt-free administration in Gauteng, let us get those reports And if we're not going to, we will take this matter to court. We are now at the final stage of finalizing our documents to approach the court to make sure that we do get those reports, and we will make those reports public so that the people of Gauteng will know what has been happening here in Gauteng and who are the dubious people that should actually be wearing orange or uniforms instead of Gucci suits that they have been wearing so far. During his last State of the Province address, he stated that there will be lifestyle audits that will be conducted. And every time we've been asking about these, we've been told now they've been conducted. And I've been asking, if they've been conducted, where are the results? Because the results should be made very public. We should know, are people living within their means? Are people saying, this is what I am and this is what my lifestyle is? And is this now really corroborated? And if it's not, then we would know that these are challenges that needs to be addressed. If we're not able to then address that, we will not be able to address the challenges of money that is being siphoned from the coffers into the private hands of people that haven't really cared about taking Gauteng forward. And this is why I make that plea again to Panyaza Lesufi. If you are serious and you want to tell the people of Gauteng that you are serious about ending corruption and maladministration, let those the lifestyle audits reports be made public, and let us see what has been happening, not only with officials, but also with the senior politicians within your administration. He speaks about the road infrastructure, and you would have heard from the video that my colleague has been talking about the state of the roads in Gauteng. As you are driving here, you would have seen how our roads have actually deteriorated to very, very low levels here. And the quality seems to be deteriorating even more because of the rains that are there, but because there is no plan. And because now part of what have been agreed by Panyaza Lesufi behind closed doors is that we are going to be paying for e-tolls as much as they have been scrapped, and now we're not paying for e-tolls. But that money, 13 billion rand that we have to be paying for, and the interest, plus also paying for the maintenance of national roads, which shouldn't be the case here, is what is now ensuring that the roads in Gauteng are not maintained. The traffic lights in Gauteng are not maintained. And we are now taking money away from that, and we are now paying for a debt that we shouldn't have incurred in the first instance. Yet Lesufi will come and boast and talk about how he has ensured that the load shed, the e-tolls are a thing of the past in Gauteng. Not saying that because we are now paying these billions of rents to a national mistake that they did, we are now not able to then build more hospitals. We are now not able to then build more clinics. And this is something that, he's going to boast to then say e-tolls are a thing of the past. But you, as the residents of Gauteng, are continuing to pay for it, whether you know it or not. He spoke about the money that needs to be spent in terms of maintaining the roads. Yet we've had 297 billion rand that has been taken through the adjustment budget. Now, why would you then take that amount of money while you have roads that have potholes, while you have roads that require traffic lights, that require street lights, and yet you have taken money away so that you're able to then pay the e-tolls? We have 149 traffic lights that are on provincial roads that are not functioning. This is creating safety risks for the pedestrians and the motorists. And Lesufi, proud of himself, as I said, for scrapping e-tolls and overburdening the residents of Gauteng, who are now forced to pay for the maintenance of the national roads, and who are also now forced to have overcrowded classes, to have overcrowded hospitals, because instead of building this new infrastructure, we're now taking money to pay for the e-toll debt. The DA in Gauteng has a tangible plan and a solution to help grow our economy and boost the investor confidence. We would address the pressing matters that potential investors complain about, and that is, addressing the issue of crime, corruption, and crumbling infrastructure. A DA government will implement a clampdown on corruption by making all forensic investigation public and implementing all recommendations. One of the other issues that will make sure that gets the center stage is the protection of whistleblowers, who from time to time have become now victims of actually then, stopped coming forward of telling us what is the rot that is happening there. And some of them have paid dearly with their own lives. Babita, Diakoram being an example of that. And we want to make sure that Babita and others who wanted to come forward and have come forward will remain, protected, and that we will do everything to ensure that they are protected, and not only protected, but we act on the information that they're bringing forward. A DA government will also conduct regular lifestyle audits and make the results of the audit public, as I said. Will further make sure that all MECs are fit for duty and will be appointed. By doing so, the residents of this province will receive the service delivery that they deserve. You've heard colleagues talking about the fighting of illegal mining. I can tell you right now, I've been to Angelo, where last year we had people dying because of the gas explosion that is there. And the very next day, Panyaza Lesufi went on the ground and promised permanent police and military presence there. Go there now and tell me if any of those things are there. It is back to normal. The Zamazamas are back doing what they have been doing day in, day out. You go to Mahale, as Taron has said, you have the continuation of the illegal operations that is taking place. In Johannesburg here, you've had houses that are now on the brink of collapsing because of people that are digging underneath the houses here and digging underneath the properties that are here. And yet you have a premier that says that, this is a matter that is receiving attention and actually is coming to an end. But we are saying the real state of where this thing is completely opposite to what he has been telling us. He's told us that we have, number of police stations that, are there to deal with the challenges that are there. He made bold statements about the number of vehicles, high-powered vehicles that he has given, to the police. But here are the true facts. In the last quarter of 2024, the police have reported that there has been 1,500 murders in Gauteng. The same period, we had 2,171 rape cases were reported here in Gauteng, which makes Gauteng the highest province in terms of the number of people that have been raped in the country. Today, only Gauteng has 143 police stations responsible for the safety of about 16 million. That is very much unattainable. And this is why we are saying, instead of coming up with these grandeur plans that really result to nothing, why don't we take care of the basics? Why can't we build more police stations? Get them equipped with more policemen and women instead of the promises that end up, being nothing. He speaks about 25,000 policemen and women that have been employed or that will be deployed in Gauteng. Where are those policemen and women? Where have they been deployed? What impact have they really given us? Celia speaks about the only place that you get to see the Panyaza is when you have, the matches, or when Panyaza Lesufi is visiting a particular community, then you'll see them all over there. But on a daily basis in Alexander, when people are leaving 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and requiring them to be out there in the street doing patrols and being visible as police, they are not there. They are not there when it's needed the most. And because of the inadequate training that they have received, and because of the ill equipment that they are busy, or ill-equipped state that they find themselves in, that we're having a serious challenge of fighting crime here in Gauteng. In 2023, he also spoke about the game changer in terms of fighting crime here in Gauteng. He speaks about the Mapanyaza that are going to be deployed. But yet crime seems to be on the rise in Gauteng and it's not coming down. The question is, are we then serious about fighting crime? And have we really deployed the right strategies? In the Western Cape, there is a LEAP program that has been implemented and we've seen the results thereof. And it's because people are getting adequate training, they're integrated into the police system, they are able to then share information and share resources with the police to ensure that crime is fought and actually been rolled back and won in certain instances. But here in Gauteng, what we would have seen is Amapanyaza crashing vehicles. We would have seen Amapanyaza being involved in lawsuits where they are being sued for actually then causing bodily harm to residents. One particular case in point is a lady at the taxi rank who was beaten for no particular reason and no provocation whatsoever. And these are some of the things that we are saying are not the solutions to where the people of Gauteng find themselves in. The Gauteng Shadow MEC of Safety, Chris Bosch, has consistently highlighted the lack of training amongst these wardens, as I said, asserting that instead of Mapanyaza reportedly crashing over 22 vehicles. We need to make sure that there is better training that takes place, like what we've had with the LEAD program. There is better deployment and better coordination of these, these forces to ensure that we are able to then multiply the police force. We will make sure that there is better training, better recruitment, better vetting, and better training and deployment of these people then going forward. This is what the DA will do, as the Western Cape has already done and have shown that it is very much possible. Panyaza has also said that there will be 7,000 plus CCTV cameras that will be working in an integrated, collaborative manner to make our province safer. I promise you, go and walk in the CBD now of Johannesburg. If you're a lady, you have weave on your head, you're most likely, if you will, then come out of there with your weave on. Yet we are told that, these are things that have come to an end. I promise you now, you will be robbed while there are, cameras that are there. And this talks to a real big challenge that is there, that there is no coordination between the so-called cameras that are supposed to be installed, the police that are supposed to be visibly there on the ground, and actually the reaction units that are supposed to be working together. That is the state of where we find ourselves as a province. What will we do? We'll make sure that there is a rollout of the CCTV cameras that will be also linked to the feed of the private security companies, having the wardens there in place, but also having companies that have come forward and say that we're willing to then assist, with private security around the vicinity of where they're operating businesses from. Once you're able to then have that as a network, you are able to then drive the issues of contact crime in the particular areas down. This is something that the Premier Lesufi has failed to implement. And in this instance, again, he has claimed victories of things that he has done nothing about. The Vuma camps are not something that Panyaza Lesufi came up with. Even before he was the premier, those Vuma cameras were already there. Go to Midval, they were already installed. Come to the city of Johannesburg, they were already installed while the DA was in government. He's just claiming easy victories and claiming things that he had nothing to do with. And you will hear much more of this easy victories that he'll be claiming in his next week's State of the Province address. But we are saying we want to work with the private sector. We want to work with everyday residents to ensure that the people of Gauteng are able to then get the safety and security that they deserve. In 2024, he's also made a promise that every family or every home will have e-panic buttons. I promise you, go and download the e-panic button, press it and see what happens. You can't have something that you press and then nothing responds, and then you are told that there's a game changer and an intervention. Those e-panic buttons now, according to their own report, there's only 2,000, active e-buttons that have been activated. And their target was 40,000 plus to be deployed in the first quarter of the 2024-2025 financial year. Yet only 2,000 of those have been downloaded, and I'm not even sure if they are all working. In 2022, Lesufi also promised to make sure that there will be fighting crime using technology. We were promised that there will be helicopters. We were promised that there will be drones that will be out there. There will be gun detection facilities that will be deployed to make sure that we're able to then deal with the issues of crime in Gauteng. 1,800 drones were promised. To date, only 33 of those have been procured, according to their own report. And of those 33 drones that were acquired, only one have actually been registered. Only one. Out of 1,800 that they promised, they were only able to get 33, and only one have actually been registered with the South African Civil Aviation Authority, which then tells us that there's only one that actually can fly. And how big is Gauteng? What is the population of Gauteng? Is it really being deployed? Are we really making means? And this is also a problem because 10.8 million rand has been spent on the procurement of these drones. And the Auditor General has actually then flagged this as an irregular expenditure under the assessment of the department's annual report. This is also talking to, again, a premier that shoots from the hip and thinks about the consequences afterwards. The integrated police or provincial command center that we have been told will ensure that the disasters within our communities are dealt with. Right now in Tshwane, we would have had a disaster where we had a tornado that has hit. The so-called command center should have been activated to deal with the problems that are there, but it's nowhere to be found. In fact, it's an empty building with only the security, and we pay millions of it for it. And every single year, it's part of the budget, but yet we don't see the effect of it. We have invited Premier Lesufi to then say, go to the Western Cape, go to Cape Town and see a disaster center that is operational, where cameras are linked. You can see the highways, you can see areas where there is a possibility of fires are being monitored. You can see the flow of traffic, you can see where the ambulances are, you can see where your fire trucks are, you can know where your police are. This is what a command center should look like and how it's supposed to be operating. Yet year in, year out in Gauteng, we're spending millions and we're talking about it and nothing happens. Again, an example of Lesufi's all talk and no action approach to fighting crime. For too long, we have emphasized that to fight crime in Gauteng, we need to address the fundamental issues. This includes providing police with essential resources such as vehicles, personnel, adequate infrastructure to combat crime effectively. And this is something that the DA wants to fight for and will continue to fight for. We want to also make sure that there is a decisive response to the President's administration requiring the challenge of illegal mining in derelict minings that has brought the market decrease of the aberrant activity in the province. We have said a number of times before, why can't we have a conversation where we begin to then legalize small-scale mining? Because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that if we get right, we should be able to derive so much more in terms of revenue. But this is something that Panyaza has failed to even take forward. We have said, let's make sure that we're able to then look into South Africans that have interest in small-scale mining. Let's get them registered, let's get them employed, and get them to do what they are doing in any way right now, but make sure that ultimately we're able to then generate revenue. This is what the DA is proposing. This is a solution that will create billions in terms of revenue for the tax, but this will also create much more needed jobs that is there. But just to go back quickly onto the issue of crime, one of the things that we have been fighting for and continue to fight for is for the decentralization of the South African police services. It cannot be that a decision on what the police should be doing in Gauteng lies in somewhere else at a national level. The people in Gauteng should be deciding what should be happening in Gauteng in terms of how we fight crime. The people in Limpopo will be deciding what happens in their province, because the crimes that are happening or the kind of situations that Limpopo people are facing will be different to what the people of Gauteng are facing. Therefore, you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. And this is why we have been calling for decentralization of this particular police force or the authority thereof. This is something that has been met obviously with arrogance that is been coming from Panyaza Lesufi. Yet we would have Michael San, who is the spokesperson on safety and security here, talking about how, even when you're talking about the problem of illegal mining, that our police are very, very much ill-prepared and actually ill-equipped to then deal with that. You have people that are coming from the ground carrying AK-47s, and yet you have police that are only carrying 9mm, and some of them not even having, protective vests, to then deal with those things, meeting fire with fire in that instance. And we wonder why we haven't been able to fight the scourge and win it. But these are some of the challenges that the people of Gauteng are dealing with, and they're saying that we are not winning the war here. One of the other issues that Panyaza has really lamented on and on about is what they call the TISH, or the Township Informal Settlement and Hostel Revitalization Program. He's actually then gone and consistently highlighted how he wanted to transform the townships and informal settlement and the hostels since he took over in 2022. Yet many hostel residents still facing living conditions that are not only inhumane, but also endanger their health and safety. To exacerbate the situation, Lesufi is avoiding accountability regarding the necessary redeployment of these hostels, or the redevelopment of these hostels rather. In his oral question, a reply to question posed by the MEC Sirota, who is the MPL from the DA, He responded by saying that some of these hostels, like Madala Hostel, is not one of his 6 hostels that he's overseeing as the government of Gauteng. Yet, when you go into the priorities of what he says of the 65 hostels, Madala Hostel and these other hostels fall squarely in what they said that they were going to spend money in. So go now and look at what Madala Hostel looked like. Go now and look at Helen Joseph and tell me what it looked like. Go now and look at Setulka and tell me what it looks like, and tell me if indeed that what they have been saying year in, year out translate into some kind of living conditions that have been improved for the people and the residents of those particular hostels. He's continued to say that they will spend much more money, yet money goes into these projects, yet they mean it has resulted in absolutely no change for the people in a better manner. The Premier has also shown that he doesn't really care about the poor. When you then start asking what has happened to the money that has been spent in hospitals like, or in the Anglo-Ashanti hospital where the COVID-19, pandemic, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, because that is money that could have been used to then ensure that we're able to house so many millions of people in Gauteng. That money, R500 million that could have gone towards ensuring that more people are being housed, has actually now not even been accounted for. There is a need in Gauteng to formalize services, especially around the informal settlement, and to build formalized housing for the people of Gauteng. The housing list has now exceeded 1.2 million rand, and the situation in the hostels is made even worse by the fact that the Departments of Human Settlement has 45 projects that they have initiated since 2008 that have remained blocked and incomplete, according to MEC Tasmin Mutara. You go to places like Montrose and see all these so-called developments, mega developments that have been started but have now stalled after spending hundreds of millions of rands, and houses in Soshanguve that the Department of Human Settlements have built that have now been destroyed up to the ground. Yet at the same time, we have a growing list of people that are on the housing list since 1996. And this government doesn't seem to be knowing whether it's moving forward or moving backward in this regard. And they don't have even a plan in terms of how to then deal with this. Yvette du Plessis, who is the DA Gauteng spokesperson on human settlement, has been highlighting in the department the lack of capacity in terms of the expertise from project management and also into the delivery that needs to be taking place, and actually the challenges and how we can actually then address the challenges. And this has not really been met by a friendly acceptance on the other side, but has been met with hostility. And this is because there are those that continue to benefit from the chaos that is ensuing in this particular department there, where millions of rands go to disappear year in, year out, yet we are seeing less and less of these houses being given to the people of Gauteng on an ongoing basis, and the list growing long and long, as we have said. Panyaza Lesufi has also spoke about how he's passionate about fighting the issue of drug in Gauteng. He announced that he will add an additional 1,351 new beds to the drug rehabilitation centers. However, this commitment appears to have been reversed according to the report by the Ground Up, which is the Department of Education, Department of Social Development subdivision that has chosen to defund more than half of its existing inpatient drug rehabilitation capacity in this province. For the 2023-2024 financial year, the department funded 571 beds across 13 NPOs. However, in 2024-2025 financial year, 5 organizations which account for 246 of these beds will no longer receive funding, which means that half of these beds that Panyaza Lesufi had promised that will be made available to fight the scourge of drug abuse and rehabilitation is actually something that is not going to be realized in Gauteng. We have now also been told about the eradication of hunger and poverty and food security in Gauteng. Yet in 2024, SOPA announced that there is a plan to launch an e-indigent register aimed at enhancing his administration's rapid response to urban hunger. He stated that all impoverished individuals in our provinces will be able to register to access the pro-poor basket. Additionally, we are reviving the poor basket, especially for our children. To date, no indigent register has been launched as yet. And there are people who are excited, thinking that for once then they will be able to properly be registered, they will be able to then get food parcels, they will be able to then ensure that the kids who would go to school hungry are no longer going to school hungry. But this is something that hasn't really been fulfilled as yet. The promises that have been made by Panyaza Lesufi has just been meaningless words, living with the vulnerable people of Gauteng struggling to get regular meals. During a visit to the Pumulan Daycare Center on Mandela Day in 2024, Shadow MEC Refudo Tseke from Social Development made a stunning discovery that, the facility was struggling to feed the elderly that, were living in the close proximity and actually dependent solely on the center for a meal. And she says something that, there are people that were getting the so-called several colors on the day. But there were people who were only taking 2 spoons out of that meal and putting the rest of that meal into plastic containers because they were saying they don't know where their next meal is going to be coming from. That is the reality of so many people here in Gauteng. And yet we have a premier that talks about a city or cities and a province that is making a turnaround and moving in the right direction. Yet millions of rents and billions are lost to corruption. Yet millions of rents are repurposed and taken away from where the people are desperately needing that kind of assistance. I want to talk about the health and wellness here in Gauteng because this is something that Panyaza made so much noise about. You'd remember that he said that he's going to build new hospitals, and they were going to buy 18 new hospitals last year. He promised that they will buy 18 new hospitals from the private sector. And then we were asked, where's the money going to come from? And he says, no, it's going to come from the workers' investment portfolio. And then we ask, is there an agreement in doing that? And then there was no agreement. As he lied, to say that there was an agreement. But further, there was never any report from the Department of Health that seeks to suggest that there is a move, to make sure that these hospitals are bought. So again, showing much more, disdain or disdain with the truth. He's shown that he's got an allergy with telling people the truth. And this is why we have said that these promises will never be realized. And we cannot continue to trust a man that has really proven that he is not serious about taking the people's life going forward. He speaks about these 18 hospitals that, he's preparing for an NHI, which then shows the little understanding that he has about what NHI is actually supposed to be then doing. Because what you're supposed to then be really doing is to then bring the public hospitals up to standard before you then say that you have, equal access and you have universal access. It's not taking them from the private sector and bringing everything down and then saying you have equal access. Yes, you'll have equal access of nothing. But if you want real equal access that provides for best care, that is needed, you need to make sure that those hospitals that are currently in existence are really brought forward. None of the hospitals in Gauteng, none, are actually compliant with OHS. None of the hospitals in Gauteng, this is not according to us, this is according to their own report, that they are not actually then, able to then meet the minimum standard of operating here in Gauteng. This is something that needs to be looked at and addressed as a matter of urgency. We have had quite a number of times when we've been told about the so-called one patient, one file approach, where we were going to digitize the process of keeping records of patients. From 15 years ago, from the time of Brian Shongwa, as Jack will tell you, that this is something that also the Auditor General has found, that the provincial health system has not maintained proper records as required by the National Health Act and the Treasury regulations, which means that you will hear much more of these promises that it means absolutely nothing, and that this is, again, another way that empty promises continue to ensure that the people's lives here in Gauteng are not improving for the better. In terms of the education, we've been hearing about the so-called 4,000 satellite schools that will be built, and yet we are not seeing any of that. In fact, we have been seeing more and more of the brick and mortar schools that have been closed. You go to Soshanguve, you see how schools have been closed. In Atteridgeville, 2 schools have been closed. Yet we are told about so-called access to information or access to better learning, better learning centers. The question is, if you're talking about equal access, why are you not promoting and fixing the existing infrastructure? We now have schools that are deliberately allowed to close down, yet at the same time, you go to places like Pretoria North, where now the so-called containers are now placed in spaces, and we're spending millions of rands transporting kids out of the townships into these areas, where we have left brick and mortar schools that have been left neglected in the townships. And these are things that we now need to then be asking, is Panyaza Lesufi really serious about turning the tide around? Sergio De Santos, who is the Shadow MEC, have visited some of the centers and some of the schools. And as I said earlier on, a school that is in Cosmo City, that is Cosmo City Junior Primary School, where there is an overcrowding in classes, that in grade A class, or in grade 1 class, they're having 92 learners, and in grade 2 class, they're having 87 learners in one class. The DA has long expressed the concern about the lack of infrastructure and poor maintenance of existing infrastructure in our schools. I've visited school in Hammanskraal and see how up to now kids are still using the bucket toilets, to go relieve themselves. Some of them don't even have doors. Some of the learners who are going into these containers that have been there as a temporary measure, but have been there for over 15, 17 years. Some of them, when you are in there, you can actually see the ground from there. This is what our learners are subjected to. And yet we ask, is this really what the people of Gauteng should be subjected to going forward? The Department of Education and Infrastructure Development are not only failing to build new schools, but they're also failing and lagging behind in terms of ensuring that they get rid of the asbestos schools. A recent department report reveals that 9 years after the initial promise were made, 29 schools in Gauteng are built entirely on predominantly asbestos, or that is posing serious risk to the health and safety of learners and the teachers there. The ongoing use of asbestos violates the 2013 Basic Education Norms and Standards for Public Infrastructure. These regulations mandated the replacement of schools constructed with inappropriate materials such as mud, wood, metal, or asbestos by the 29th of November 2016. As our MPL went and indeed and asked questions about what is the timelines or the new timelines in terms of when the eradication will be, a detailed plan should be provided in terms of what are we going to do and what is being done by non-performance of the so-called contractors, and what is leading to the disruption by communities or the business forums that are acting in a manner that is stopping some of the projects from continuing to be rolled out. And these are some of the things that we are doing as a DA to ensure that there is responses and the answers to hold the officials and the politicians to account in terms of what is happening in the eradication of the asbestos schools, and actually then ensuring that there is proper maintenance of our infrastructure in the schooling system. We have now heard about the so-called the pathology center that have been built in Johannesburg. We have heard now that the center is 95% completed, and it was supposed to have been opened by August last year. And now we are told that no, it's going to be open. 500 million, has been spent in terms of, building this particular center, and yet it is 4 years late. And we are now told that it is going to be opened up. I must tell you that this is one of the reasons why rape victims don't get justice, because the DNA testing cannot be processed as quickly as it's supposed to be and released to the courts to make judgments. This is why you cannot solve certain matters, because DNA analysis are not being able to then be conducted. And we wonder why crimes cannot be resolved, especially violent crimes cannot be resolved here in Gauteng. We will continue to make sure that we keep this government to account for the 500 million that has been spent on that particular center and why the center is not coming to life. We were told also that there will be the implementation of the land invasion strategy. In 2023, Lesufi plans that he will carry out the land invasion strategy to prevent the establishment of a new informal settlements across Gauteng. He ensured that, he assured that from the 1st of September in 2024, there will be no further land invasion in Gauteng. I want you to move around Gauteng and tell me how many more land invasions have actually then taken place here. Instead, in certain instances, even schools are now being invaded, where the school grounds are actually then invaded, that learners are supposed to be walking through informal settlements to just get into a class. In certain instances, the same toilets of those schools are now not operational because of now the over crowded usage of those particular spaces. And this is something that we have been asking, Panyaza Lesufi to deal with this thing. And this is something that Katuchelo Ralisimwane, as the spokesperson of infrastructure, have written to the MEC of Education, Matume Chilwane, and the MEC of Human Settlement, Tasmin Motara, seeking comprehensive explanations of the lack of action taken to resolve some of these persisting issues around the issues of informal settlement, and especially those that have now mushroomed in the latest stage, and in those areas that are supposed to be used for schooling and other facilities or purposes. We need to make sure that we deal decisively with hijacked buildings. This is something that he's also made promises about. And in his first 100 days, he said that he will announce a plan in terms of how we will be able to then reclaim some of the spaces. I want you to go and listen to what he says. He says that in the first 100 days, he will put out a plan in terms of what they will do in terms of reclaiming some of the spaces. And nothing has been done as yet. Please tell me, we are now, 8 months, 9 months down after the elections, but not a single building has been reclaimed back. In fact, in certain instances, we are still paying for security to guard derelict buildings that should have actually then been repurposed and relocated, either for housing people or actually for housing employees of the province of Gauteng government. But this hasn't really taken place. In fact, we are now paying more in renting office spaces and leaving government-owned buildings which are left derelict, and spending so much more, renting from the private, sector instead of fixing our own. And this is why, in certain instances, you would have hijacked buildings. In Johannesburg, you have even houses that belong to the state that have been hijacked by the syndicates that are operating in a manner, that is in an illegal way. And government has actually then turned a blind eye. So these are things that Panyaza needs to be telling the people of Gauteng how we deal with. But it's also then been talking about how we're going to deal with the blue lights, the fake blue lights in Gauteng. In 2023, during his State of the Province address, he told us that there is an increased abuse of blue lights, and in fact in Gauteng there is an increase in the fake blue lights that have been there. Yet, we haven't heard anything from the Department of Community Safety in terms of what has been done to ensure that there is a unit that is actually working towards this. So it means that 2 years down the line, it's just been an empty promise that hasn't really led to any kind of, concrete solution that has been implemented there. The South African Police Service is still wondering then how they're able to then deal with it, because the Premier has made promises that are not actually then being met by tangible solutions on the ground. And we need to then also then deal with the issues of guns that, the stolen guns in Gauteng. In February, Lesufi informed the residents of Gauteng in a State of the Province address that the Gauteng government has developed a solution to assist in tracking stolen firearms and locating them throughout the country. To date, not even a single gun has actually then been successfully tracked, despite the ambitious goal of reaching 1,000 guns a year. This gap highlights the department's lack of commitment to ensuring and monitoring monitoring and accountability. And Lesufi refuses to give a designated MEC, for good reasons only known to him, why we cannot have an MEC that can actually then deal with this kind of things. In fact, he's now taken power into his office, and it's all because of the internal struggles of the ANC and power struggles between him and Lebohang Maile that we continue to have these things and not have a functioning department as we're supposed to be having in terms of safety and security. So these are some of the things that we continue to then experience as residents of Gauteng. And we are saying that on Monday, you are going to be subjected to more of promises that are going to mean absolutely nothing at the end of the day. We need to then ensure that going forward, we're able to then hold this government to account. We have a government that not only tells us of pipe dreams and things that are coming, that are never really going to materialize, into ensuring that ultimately there is, accountability of what has been said, what has been delivered, and how we are going to move as the people of Gauteng in a prosperous way. We can no longer tolerate being served pompous rhetoric instead of concrete change. The residents of Gauteng deserve a government that is actually action orientated, doesn't have much talk but has much form. We deliver services to all the people of Gauteng and will actually be accountable to the people of Gauteng in a transparent manner. As a Democratic Alliance, we have a record of effective service delivery, transparent governance, and economic growth where we govern. Gauteng residents have two paths ahead of them. One is the current path of broken promises and general decay. The second path is a future of accountable leadership and progress that will uplift the province of Gauteng and its residents. Thank you very much.
There you have it, Gauteng. We have just heard the true state of the province in the run-up to hearing more broken promises by Premier Lesufi. The DA has a clear plan to rescue Gauteng. The residents of Gauteng deserve a government that puts their needs first and before the needs of politicians and stomach politics. It is exceptionally important that each and every one of us ensure that we are correctly registered to vote in the upcoming local government elections, so that people can take back their power and fire those who are incompetent and have little regard for the lived reality of so many people. Please make sure you continue posting your questions on the chat and join the conversation online using the hashtag #TrueStateOfGauteng. If you can see yourself being part of the Gauteng Rescue Mission, then make sure you apply to be a local councillor at apply.da.org.za. Let's unite and rescue Gauteng. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Nazli Sharif, sharp and aware.